Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of State of Mind. This will be part 44, the second half to chapter 26. They rode back to the dorms with Mike, Shoto and Izuku sitting side by side in the back, still holding hands. Shoto was leaning against Izuku, his eyes falling shut, only to jerk back open. It was almost 6 in the morning, and he was exhausted, with a capital E. They hadn't slept all night, and the night before they'd stayed up late, watching Frozen again with Eri in the common room. One thing he'd noticed about the little girl was that she was practically nocturnal, always wanting to be with Nova and Shoto during the night, and sleeping during the day when they were in classes. Shoto didn't like to think about why she was like that, and he didn't mind staying up with her. But man, was he tired. They pulled straight up to the dorms, and Izuku climbed out of the car, pulling Shoto with him, who yawned widely, not even bothering to hide it behind his hand. The sun was rising over the horizon, brilliant hues of orange and yellow spearing the world. Izuku didn't seem like he was noticing. Gaze pointed at his feet as they walked up the sidewalk toward Heights Alliance. Shoto's hand clutched tightly in his grip. Izuku had always loved the sky. Shoto could still remember that poetic moment outside of the mall so long ago, when Izuku was looking up at the sunset. The fact that he wasn't taking in the beauty of the sky now was almost painful. Mike waved to them before he had to leave to go prepare for classes. Once inside the dorm, Shoto ignored Ida's line of questioning, surprised that they were coming back in. This was about the time that the class rep usually went on his run. It was very rare that anyone else would be up yet. Shoto pushed aside his intense exhaustion and pulled Izuku to the elevator, stabbing the button for the roof. Izuku didn't respond, as if he wasn't even noticing what was going on, and Shoto was worried. The elevator came to a stop, and the doors slid open, Shoto dragging Izuku out of it, and then seating them both near the edge, far enough away to be safe, but close enough so that Izuku could see. "Izuku," Shoto murmured, and his boyfriend looked up at him with hazy, viridian eyes. "I love you, Izuku." The haze faded a bit, and Izuku smiled, small, but it was there. "I love you too, Peppermint." Shoto looked out at the horizon and lifted a hand to point while he still had Izuku's attention. "Look, Izuku. Look at the sun." Izuku turned his gaze away from Shoto, looking to where he was pointing. "Oh," he breathed, and then let himself fall against Shoto, who wrapped an arm around him. Shoto lifted an arm, draping his arm across Izuku's shoulders, holding him tightly. They didn't speak, sitting in silence as the star rose above the horizon in an explosion of brilliant rays of bright color. Once the colors faded, and it became annoyingly bright and over-warm, Shoto and Izuku stood, heading back to the elevator. "We should eat something," Shoto murmured, once they were heading down. "I'm not hungry," Izuku answered immediately. "We should both eat anyway." Shoto pushed, one hand on Izuku's elbow, as he guided the green-haired boy toward the kitchen, immediately noticing Bakugo was in there, making his own breakfast before class. "What's up with him?" the blonde asked, pointing a spatula at Izuku, as Shoto sat him down at the table. "Bakugo!" Izuku lifted his head, and Shoto could see an unfamiliar burning light within them. "If you piss me off, I will punch you through the wall." Shoto froze, eyes widening, looking between the two heroes in training nervously, hands twitching, at the ready to defend Izuku if the need arose. "Calm down, Deku. I'm not going to bother you. Do you want some eggs?" Bakugo growled, the spatula still pointing at Izuku. Izuku sagged forward, hair falling to cover his face. Shoto couldn't help but feel that Izuku had been trying to goad the blonde into a fight, and he grew even more worried. "Sure," Izuku responded, with a sigh, and Shoto sat down across from him, kicking his feet gently as Bakugo turned around with a huff, cracking more eggs into the pan. Izuku glanced up at Shoto through strands of hair, dark shadows beneath his eyes. Shoto felt like he wasn't doing enough. "Here, losers," Bakugo said after a moment, setting a plate each down in front of them. "Thanks, Kachan," Izuku said, wincing slightly when the old nickname came out, but then just sighing and lifting his fork to eat. Now that he could smell the food and it was right in front of him, he did feel a bit hungry. Bakugo frowned at the back of Izuku's head before dropping into his own seat at the other end of the table. There was silence for a moment, Shoto's mind racing as he struggled to find something to say. "So what's—" Bakugo began, at the same time that Izuku said, "Dad took Mom." Bakugo blinked, egg halfway to his mouth. "What?" Izuku's hand tightened around his fork. "My father has been an abusive asshole my entire life, to both my mom and I. You know that, you overheard me tell Shoto. But he left, and then my mom left, and I was alone, but now we were getting better, and she's getting married and I have Shoto, and just when I was finally fucking happy, he shows back up and kidnaps Mom, and sends me a freaking text telling me to meet him later today, and I know that he means that if I don't show up, he's going to kill her, because that's what he always said to get me to come out of hiding. And Aizawa wants me to just sit here, doing nothing, while everyone else deals with it." Izuku went quiet, staring down at his untouched eggs while both Bakugo and Shoto blinked in utter shock. There was just something about the presence of his childhood friend, his first friend, that made all that stuff spill out, and now he was just so worn out and hurt. Izuku pushed his chair back, standing and shoving his palms into his eyes, fingernails burying in his hairline. A shudder ran down his body, and he shook his head. I can't." And then he ran, green lightning sparking across his body as he seemed to disappear. The only thing left behind was the blast of wind from his sudden takeoff. Shoto swallowed and looked away from where he'd last seen Izuku, over to Bakugo, who was sitting in his chair, a strange, out-of-place expression on his face. "Go get your boy. I'm gonna finish my damn food and then I'll message you. Bring him down then," he said, and Shoto's eyes narrowed in suspicion before he shook his head, picking up his and Izuku's plates and wrapping them. Cold eggs were no good usually, but maybe they could cut them up and put them in a salad or something later. Later. After. Shoto grimaced and headed to Izuku's room. It was closer than a lot of the other rooms, and he made it quickly, knocking gently on the door. "It's me, Izuku." "Come in," Izuku's shaky voice called back, and Shoto took a deep breath before shoving the door open. He found Izuku sitting with his back against the wall, Wink cradled against his chest, his face buried against her fur. He was hyperventilating. Shoto rushed forward, grabbing Izuku around his shoulders and front and pulling him against him. He didn't know what to say to help this. He didn't know what to do like Aizawa always did, or even All Might. And it wasn't like he could get either of them. They were both at the police station or trying to rescue Izuku's mom and take down the villain. That was not Izuku's father, just like Endeavor was not his. "Everything is going to be all right," Shoto murmured, squeezing Izuku tightly. You can hear my heart, right? Listen to that. I've got you." Wink squirmed out of Izuku's grip, head-butting him in the face and meowing, before stretching up, putting her paws on Izuku's shoulder to lick at his cheek. Izuku's chest stuttered, and he coughed, groaning, and Shoto had to stop him from digging his palm into his eye. Eventually, Izuku got his breathing under control, and he leaned back against the wall once again. "I hate this," he whispered hoarsely. "I hate feeling like this. I hate that this crap always happens to me. I hate it all." "I'm sorry, Izuku," Shoto murmured, frowning deeply. He didn't know what to do, and it hurt. Izuku sighed and lifted Wink up, looking into her yellow eye. "What am I supposed to do, Shoto?" "You're supposed to eat, maybe get some sleep," Shoto answered almost immediately, glancing to the side when he heard movement behind Izuku's door, but choosing to ignore it. "That's all you can do right now. You've got me here. I can do my best to help you." Izuku didn't answer for a long moment, but then he set Wink down, looking at the ground. "Thank you, Peppermint. I'm sorry. This is just difficult." His voice cracked on the word difficult, and he crossed his arms over his body comfortingly, eyes closing, forehead creased. Shoto moved to lean forward. To do what, he didn't know, but then his phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out, seeing the notification from Bakugo. He slid his finger up on the screen, unlocking it and checking the message. Bakugo was telling him to come down and to bring Izuku with him. Shoto frowned but pocketed his phone. "Let's go downstairs," he said to Izuku, who shook his head. "I can't eat anything," he answered, voice lacking any intonation whatsoever. "What about something liquid?" Shoto answered. "I could make you a smoothie." Izuku hesitated from where he'd been petting Wink, something akin to shame crossing his features before his shoulders sank, and he nodded. He felt bad for making Shoto worry, for feeling he had to nearly beg Izuku to eat anything. "Okay," he sighed. Shoto resisted the urge to exhale in relief and stood, offering a hand to Izuku, who took it, letting him pull him up. They left the room, Wink at their heels as they trudged toward the common room. Shoto, freezing in the doorway, caused Izuku to look up, inhaling sharply when he saw everyone in the room, spread out on blankets on the floor or curled up on the couches, or in Tokiyami's case, laying across the back of one of them like a cat. "What's going on?" Izuku leaned in and whispered. "Doesn't class start in like 30 minutes? Shoto shrugged, gaze flicking over to Bakugo, who sat on one of the couches next to Kirishima. The boy caught his look and scowled, looking down at his phone. Shoto's own phone vibrated, and he lifted it to see what Bakugo had said. "I told them Deku needed cheering up, that's it. They're all skipping class on their own," the text said, and Shoto lifted his head, nodding to Bakugo. "Let's just sit down for a bit," Shoto said, lifting a hand to settle on Izuku's back, between his shoulder blades, gently pushing him forward. Oh, Izuku said, letting Shoto push him to the edge of one of the blankets amidst the couches. "Big brother, sit with me!" Eri caught sight of Izuku and shouted from next to Togata. "Go ahead," Shoto said. "I'll make us both some smoothies." Izuku nodded, expressionless, and then pulled his shoes off, pushing them to the side before dropping onto the blanket next to Eri. He leaned his head back against the couch with a sigh, his body between Uraraka and Ida, where they sat above him. "So, what are you all doing down here right before class?" Kaminari started intelligently,
Class was cancelled, Ida stated easily, glancing at his classmates cautiously. It was a lie, of course. To his knowledge, class had not been cancelled, but sometimes, rarely, other things were more important. Other people, like Izuku. I didn't know that, Izuku answered, cracking his eyes open to look through his hair at Ida. Well, you must have missed the email, Uraraka added on brightly, patting Izuku's head. Oh, maybe. I don't have my phone. Izuku sighed. That must be it then. We all decided to watch a movie down here together since there's no class, but we're having trouble choosing one. Is there anything that you would like to watch? Uraraka asked. Frozen? Ari's voice asked as she crawled across Izuku's legs to lean against him. The corner of Izuku's mouth tilted up as he ran a hand through the small girl's hair, tightening one of the ever-present ribbons that twined through it. What about Monsters, Inc.? He asked, recalling the fond memory with Aizawa and the spoon, before they had rescued Ari. That works, Kirishima exclaimed, picking up the remote and looking for the movie online. Did Bakugo tell you guys what happened? Izuku whispered, in question after a moment. We don't know anything, Tokuda reassured him from his side. But we're here for you regardless, Midoriya. Yamazawa, Izuku corrected quickly. Oh? Tokuda raised a brow. Sorry. It's fine. It's new. Izuku shrugged, looking down at Ari. Shoto came back from the kitchen and handed a greenish smoothie down to Izuku before dropping down to sit next to him. Thank you, Izuku murmured, adjusting Ari so that he could hold her with one hand and hold the smoothie with the other. Izuku took a sip of it and grimaced. This is not sweet, he blinked, glancing at the smoothie. It's a vegetable smoothie. They are not supposed to be sweet. Shoto looked at Izuku in confusion, and Izuku shrugged. Okay. It wasn't like it bothered him. He'd lived on worse food when he lived alone, which left him as the opposite of a picky eater. He'd usually take what sustenance he could get without any complaint. The movie started, and Uraraka dropped a blanket from above onto his and Shoto's shoulders. Izuku glanced up, and Uraraka smiled warmly down at him, and then leaned into Ida. Izuku raised a brow at her, and she blushed, turning away from him to look back at the screen, pointedly pretending her cheeks weren't flaming. Izuku smirked to himself before fixing the blanket, wrapping it around Ari, himself, and Shoto, before laying against Shoto comfortably, nestling against his side. The smoothie was nice, if a bit bitter. It was easy on his stomach, and helped his queasy feeling. Shoto was right. It had been the perfect thing to make for how he was feeling. The rest of the class quieted down, and Izuku sighed, trying to force his mind away from what was going on with his mom, and with all the heroes that were trying to rescue her, without his help, dealing with his problems while he snuggled with his boyfriend and his sister, surrounded by his classmates, warm blanket on his shoulders. Yeah, trying not to think about it definitely wasn't working. Ari turned with a large yawn, shoving her face into Izuku's armpit, and he smiled, brushing her hair with his fingers absently, as he leaned farther into Shoto, his head against his arm, Shoto's head falling into his hair. Hisashi was not happy that Shoto was dealing with Inko and Hisashi, but they'd both agreed that one of them needed to stay behind to watch the class and continue teaching, and to be there for Izuku. They both also knew that Hisashi was a bit too emotional and connected to the mission to take part in it. Shoto had always been better at regulating his emotions when he needed to. He walked through the hallway toward Shoto's homeroom with a sigh. He'd just left his own, telling them to study, leaving the class reps in charge. He'd figured 1A would be all right alone for 5 minutes while he dealt with his own. Hisashi reached the class and threw open the door with an excited swoosh, as he always did, charging right in, but freezing when he found the class utterly empty. His heart skipped a beat, 1,000 bad scenarios playing out in his head as to why the students wouldn't be in their classroom. All of them, gone, was not a normal occurrence, especially for Ida, the most diligent student he'd ever met. He begged the world not to have anything happen to them. He and the students had enough on their plate right now. He power-walked out of the room, shooting a text to the teacher group chat to ask Cementos to head to his own classroom early, while he rushed down the hallway of UA, out the front door, and pushing straight on, back to Heights Alliance. He shoved open the door to the dorms, feet pounding against the ground as he turned the corner to see the common room, halting in place at the sight before him. Every student was somehow fitting in the room, on the couches and on the floor, on blankets. Even Togeda was there. His own kid was wrapped in a blanket, his other kid, Eri, curled against him, while he drowsed against Todoroki, who seemed to also be asleep, face buried in Izuku's hair. A movie was playing on the screen, but most of the students seemed to be resting or reading, few of them really seeming to be paying attention. From one of the couches, Ida caught sight of him and straightened, gently moving Uraraka off of him, setting her down to continue sleeping. He climbed past the student sleeping at his feet, Togeda grinning up at him, one of the few students who seemed to actually be paying attention to the movie. Ida made his way over to Hisashi and bowed in front of him, apologizing rapidly for none of his class showing up. Bakugo let us know that Izuku was going through something, and maybe needed some cheering up, so we decided as a class to be absent today. I apologize for any trouble and undue stress we have caused. There was not... Ida. Hisashi smiled, patting the boy's shoulder, causing him to straighten back up. It's fine. I'll talk to Nezu, see if we can get you all excused for the day. None of you are there anyway, it's not like we can do much about that. Ida nodded, shoulders settling in relief. Thank you, Sensei. And Ida, Hisashi began, the boy looking back at him from where he turned away to rejoin his friends. Thank you for doing this. There is a lot going on at the moment. Izuku needs all the support he can get, and I am glad to know that you and the rest of the class are there for him. I am sure he appreciates it as well. Of course we're there for him. Ida slammed the side of his hand against a palm, brows drawing together. He is our friend and classmate and deserves to be happy and healthy, and if I can make that happen, then I will do it. Hisashi blinked tears away from his eyes. Heart thoroughly warmed, and then gestured for Ida to go ahead back to the couch, sighing at the sight. He was glad that Izuku was getting some sleep. Todoroki, too. He knew that neither of them had slept the night before, since they had taken them to the police station and spent almost the entire night there. He was worried about his husband, too, trying to keep in constant communication with him as much as possible. He knew that things weren't going well. He said that the Ito guy kept saying that Inko's position was moving constantly, as if they had some sort of teleportation quirk available to them, also implying that Kisashi had a group at his disposal, probably a gang of some sort. Hopefully it was nothing like the League of Villains, and instead, something that the heroes could deal with easily. They did have All Might on their side, even if he was retired, and his time limit was very short. Hisashi could only hope for the best, heading for Nezu's office. He glanced at the clock and winced. It was already past noon, and they only had until 5 to rescue Inko. Hisashi really hoped everything turned out all right. Izuku ended up sleeping far longer than he'd expected or meant to, his body and mind both utterly exhausted, shutting down. Most of his classmates were gone, and someone had moved him to the couch, his head on Shoto's lap while the other boy slumbered against the armrest, bi-colored hair covering his eyes. Izuku sat up slowly, noting that Eri was gone as well, and wondered how he could have possibly slept through so much movement. Shoto's phone was on his legs, so Izuku grabbed it to check the time, his stomach absolutely plummeting when he saw it was past 1800. He'd slept for hours, and it was past when the rescue should have happened. Izuku almost dropped the phone immediately before he noticed the notification from Aizawa at the top, and he clicked on it, the edges of his vision graying out with anxiety and trepidation. We failed, but Inko is still alive according to Ito. Please tell Izuku to remain there and safe. Please don't leave his side. His phone received another message from Hisashi. We need to make sure he stays right there. Izuku's jaw tightened, one for all rising to his skin, struggling to aid him as his fight-or-flight response kicked in. Izuku noticed another notification then, a text from Izuku's mother's number. He knew because he had seen it often enough in the past 2 weeks that he'd memorized it. And he also knew that it was actually his asshole father texting Izuku's boyfriend. That was not okay. He'd completely forgotten that they'd given his mom Shoto's phone number. He was really regretting it now. The message read, I'm sure you'll see this, Izuku. I'm very disappointed in you, sending a bunch of heroes instead. I thought I'd raised you better than that, but apparently UA trains cowards. If you're not at the next location within 3 hours, I will kill your mother, and I'll make sure it is agonizing. Shoto had received the message at exactly 1700. Izuku's grip tightened, his teeth grinding, the phone screen cracking before falling to the ground. It was fine. He'd already memorized the second location. Hisashi was smart. He always had been. Smart enough to figure out the police must have his phone. Smart enough to know that Izuku was probably with Shoto. Izuku stood on stiff legs, bending down to press a kiss against Shoto's temple. I'll be back soon, he promised in a whisper, to unhearing ears before turning around, walking toward the elevator and entering it, pressing the roof button. He felt numb, except for his anger. His hands were fisted at his sides and his quirks snaked beneath his skin, tingling, the hairs on his arms standing on end. He glanced down at his arms, sliding fingers across old burn scars, jaw working. Never again. Never again. Izuku may have once been his father's puppet, something to use, something to hurt. But puppets could learn to cut their own strings. They could learn to fight back. He was strong now. He was his father's road to ruin, his undoing. The villain just didn't know it yet. It was raining now, the sky dark and tumultuous, churning. Izuku didn't stop as the elevator doors slid open, striding forward as curtains of rain showered the ground, picking up speed until he was sprinting toward the edge, green flickering across his skin as he called his quirks to him, float and one for all practically giving him the ability of flight. And Izuku took advantage of it, flinging himself off of the roof, heels cracking the ground, cement tumbling down as he shot into the air like a bullet from a gun. He was a bolt of lightning in the sky. He was rage. He was a star, taken by the wind, carried by his anger and his scars. He was a nova. He'd let the heroes have a chance. It was his turn now. Izuku was coming for his father. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 26 of State of Mind. Chapter 27 will be up next. I'd love to hear the thoughts and reactions we're having to everything so far. Definitely a powerful chapter with a lot of comfort and support from Izuku's classmates as he settles back into the UA dorms, and the fact that the heroes have failed. And Izuku gets that text notification at the worst possible time, right, while Shoto's asleep, and instead of being stopped from taking this step, Izuku has a prime opportunity to do so and escape from Heights Alliance with no one knowing he's gone yet. So I'd love to hear the thoughts and reactions. Please drop your comments below for me. We're nearly to the end of this fic. There's 2 more chapters left, chapters 27 and 28. And so just a couple more parts to this, and we'll be wrapping this fic up. So let me know your predictions, anything that you're feeling about this so far as we get towards the end here. Just a reminder as well that the fic is located on AO3, so you're always welcome to slide over, leaving comments, kudos, and support to the original author. I'm sure it's much appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.